So Bitcoin comes along in 2008 in the middle of the crisis. It's kind of like it was perfectly prepared for this and said, Satoshi goes, hey, look at this. I can create an algorithm that only creates so much of this thing, the Bitcoin, and it can never vary, ever. So therefore, this is scarcity that humans can't fuck around with. Now, humans have this propensity to fuck around with scarcity because they're economically incentivized to do so. Here they can't. So then they become economically incentivized to own this asset because it's scarce and it cannot be changed because it has this consistent supply curve and a limited number. So Bitcoin becomes this great store of value. And it would look like gold because gold's a good store of value. It's worked for thousands of years. But Bitcoin has this other thing to it. It's a network, which gold isn't, and it's technology, which gold isn't. So we have use cases and the benefits of building a network. So suddenly it goes up exponentially in price. Roll on to 2015, and suddenly somebody's looking at the blockchain and they start saying, imagine if these bits on the blockchain, which is where you record the ownership of something, in Bitcoin, it's Bitcoin itself. What happens if we could put a contract in there? Because humans live off contracts. You know, everything is basically a contract in our legal terms. And that was the rise of Ethereum. It became a platform where you could programmably change the blockchain. Not the attributes of the blockchain. You couldn't remove anything off that ledger, but you could change the little holding buckets and say, well, it can look like this, it can look like that, it can adopt to this. And those things were verifiable as well, so they couldn't change. So this created Ethereum, which became the platform. So if you think of Bitcoin as this store of value, this very pristine, beautiful thing, then you think of Ethereum as also a very beautiful thing, but it's a much broader application because it's like programmable money. Ethereum's kind of like owning a part of the internet. It's, as you said, I mean, everybody has to use Ethereum basically that uses this crypto rails, unless you're just in the Bitcoin world. But everything that we've talked about, and everybody will have, even if you're not very familiar with the space, will have heard the term DeFi or NFTs or tokens. Basically, most of that is still being built on Ethereum. And as you said, the network. So what is this Metcalfe's law that you and I have referred to? Metcalfe's law is, it really started to become understood in the 80s, and then much more so as mobile phone networks started, these giant connected networks, right? Because digital technology allowed networks to connect. Before it's humans, we couldn't connect with each other in the same way. So networks connect with mobile phones, suddenly they explode in value. You know, all these phone companies, huge companies. And if you added them all up around the world, they'd be worth tens of trillions probably. We just don't even think of it in those terms because they're fragmented networks. Then the internet comes along, this free network, and everybody builds on top of it, and they create network effects. Like the most classic example is Facebook. Facebook connects us with friends and family, and in exchange, they get your data, they sell you adverts, and so you've got a bunch of people using it, a bunch of businesses now building on it, and this advertising monetization structure. Shareholders get rich, you and I get to unfortunately meet somebody from university that we don't want to talk to, that we met 20 years ago and we're now connected with again. You know, it's that. But the network that Ethereum and Bitcoin does is different. You're the owner of the network and the user. So as a user, like you said, with the NFT, you're actually owning a share of the network itself. So everybody uses it, owns a part of it. Therefore, if the network's going to get used a lot, you're all going to get rich, and the value of the network is going to go up massively. And the more people build interconnections, so the Metcalfe's law is not only just the number of nodes, i.e. the number of users, but how much they connect with each other. Well, you're seeing it because there's NFTs and there's DeFi and there's all of these applications, or the store of money aspect. These things all together, and then there's the linking of all of these, like Chainlink or some of these other protocols, Polkadot. They're linking all this ecosystems together. So I can send you $1 instantaneously, and we have no idea whether it went on Bitcoin rails, XRP rails, Ethereum rails. And guess what? We don't care. I promised you $1, you want to get the dollar instantaneously. That's interoperability. That's all coming. So this is what Ethereum is about. It's the magnitude of this network, where everybody's developing everything on top of it, and it's scarce supply. So it's seeing an even faster adoption rate than Bitcoin now, for the reasons that seem pretty clear, because it has more use cases than currently the Bitcoin blockchain does. Doesn't mean Bitcoin blockchain can't in due course, but right now there's a lot more use cases in Ethereum. It's super exciting.
Do you think that Bitcoin would need to do something like that in order to retain its value proposition?
No, I think its value proposition stands above all things. It is pristine, it's pure, it is what it is. And the way it's so impossible to change any of the attributes of Bitcoin makes it a bit clunky. And that clunkiness is its beauty. It is so secure. It's the most secure of all protocols. So let it be what it wants to be. Now, people are building things like the Lightning layer, which allows you to do lots of fast payments over the top. Maybe that scales. Maybe it doesn't. Doesn't really matter. That store of value for every person to think of, like it's owning a piece of Manhattan real estate at low prices, that's never going away. Not in the conceivable future, because humans have now said it has value and it's being adopted very fast. So no, Ethereum's a very different thing. It doesn't compete. That's how I like to think about it. And unfortunately, when you go online, people will tell you, well, it's competing and it's not as good. You have to ignore all of that and look at the whole space overall and just be honest, saying, we don't know where this is going to be in 10 years time. And like you say, so therefore I can own 3 of these things, and probability is I'm going to capture a large part of this, and maybe I'll adapt in due course. And macro investing is all about being open-minded to other possibilities. So once you learn the trick that it's okay to say you don't know, but I think this might be how it plays out. So you think in what's known as probabilistic terms. Then for that to happen, for you to say, look, I think there's an 80% chance that Bitcoin over the next 5 years is going to $250,000. That's a reasonable odds. What's the 20% chance that it doesn't? Okay, so you need to have both of those things in your mind at any one stage and be assessing them. I learned that from the book, I think it was The Alchemy of Finance by George Soros, who was probably the most famous of all of the macro investors. And he would talk about this a lot, that you have to have these kind of logic trees of probability trees. And once you understand that, you can even bet against yourself, which is really hard to do, and I can't do it. But some of the best traders can be, long the S&P. They think the S&P is rising, but then they think the odds of it falling are getting higher, and they start selling against themselves. It's like, it's very hard to do. But that kind of investing teaches you to keep an open mind, because you're looking at the whole world, and you have to know that we don't know the outcome. And anybody who tells you that they know what's going to happen, it's just a fraud. It's just the open mind. So I don't know, but I think, and this is why I think. That's all you need to do. That's open-minded in a nutshell, admitting that you are fallible.